you love React, Node.js, and Prisma and don't want to spend time writing boilerplate code, this framework is for you. Presenting Wasp. It's a Rails-like framework that I discovered recently, and today as I build a full stack nodes application, I'm gonna be taking you guys with me. So as you can see on this graph right here, it does have this like Wasp main configuration file that describes high-level details of your web app, so you can describe the whole architecture inside it, and that kind of clears out the confusion between server, client, and once you have that, Wasp code compiler is going to take it, and using it, you can easily create functions that you can use on the front-end side. On the back-end side, you have Prisma, that's what Wasp uses for the database, and deployment is also very easy. You just have to run one command to deploy all three parts of your application. So which I think it is pretty cool. And it also comes with like TypeScript support, authentication. It is open source, so feel free to check it out. Or if you're interested to contribute, I will add the link to their website and their GitHub in the description of the video. So yeah, let's get started and let me know what you guys think. So I'm here on Quick Start page on Wasp tutorial, and the first step to get started with it is to install the tool itself. So that could be done by running this command. I already have that installed, so I'm not gonna run it, but I will walk through on creating the project itself. So we copy the command and go to our terminal, and once we navigate to the folder where we want our project to be created, we just paste the command, and so we get a notice that it created a new Wasp app, and once that's created, we can cd into it. So one more time, I'm gonna cd, copy this, and now we start the app by running wasp start. So I'm getting that my node version is okay. Does not match the required node version of the Wasp, but in here it's indicated that what version they're using, so we can just copy and use the same version. So I do have that installed. Let's use that one now using, okay. Try one more time. The app is running right now. That only took even less than a minute. And I also have the code open in VS Code. You can use IDE of your choice. And let's do a quick walkthrough of the code. So first we're going to start off with the main Wasp file. Now, this file is where you define your database schema, and Wasp uses Prisma as a database. And after that, in source, we have different folders for client and server. Client is related to any client components, for example, anything that would be UI, interactivity, displaying data, etc. And then inside the server, we're going to have actions that is more like interacting with the server related, either like queries or updating data. So yeah, let's get started from main Wasp file. And what we're going to do here is we're going to create a node entity. Entity would be like kind of, you can think of it as a model. So let's get started. Entity, today node. And as I mentioned, Wasp is using Prisma, so PSL stands for Prisma syntax language. And we're going to also do this to take a note of that. And the first field that we're going to have on the node is ID. And once we give a name to the field, after that, we give it a type, which would be integer. And then we can indicate the ID if there is like a default value or not. So I'm going to say default. I just want this to be auto-incremented. So when I'm creating a node, I don't want to worry about setting the ID. And another field that I'm going to give it is content string, just the content of the node, mostly the text of it. All right, now we have a node created and we need to store the nodes and get the nodes. So how do we do that? This is where the concept of queries and actions come in. So in order to get the nodes, we would need query, and in order to update anything, we would need action. So query is more like a read data, update would be action. Query, and then we give query a node, that would be get node. So here we're defining that this is a function, and what we want to do is we want to import get nodes from serve queries.js, and then we indicate what entities we're going to be getting this from. So this would come from the nodes. Let's also define an action here, update node. So once again, this is function, and it's in a very similar manner to this one. So I'm gonna copy and modify it. So instead of importing get node, we are gonna say update node, and in here, instead of queries, we're gonna have actions. And once again, the entity would be the same because we're dealing with the same data model. Oops, didn't copy that right. All right, let's save this. And now we are gonna go ahead and inside queries server folder, create queries and actions files. So new file, queries.js, and okay, let's I'm gonna start with the queries first. So export constant get nodes. This is our function, and this is asynchronous because it's getting data from the database, and we, as a parameters, we're taking arguments and context. So for now, this function will just get all the nodes, so we don't actually need arguments inside it, but we do need context because we want to access these entities, and from here we want to access the name of the entity, which is node, and this is the function. So if you're familiar with Prisma, you know how Prisma has different functions, and for finding all of it, you use find many, and then you pass an empty object because you don't have any where conditions or anything, so they'll get all the data. And save this one. Now we'll move on to creating actions, and we are defining two actions, one for creating node and another one for update node. And after that, you're gonna see how we'll run the studio and how easy it is to see the data in the database, update it, and do all those operations. So yeah, let's go to actions, and starting with the export node here, export constant. Oh, I meant create node. This equals to async, once again, arguments, context, and we will return context, entities, once again, accessing node. Now we're gonna use create function, and inside create function, we need to pass the data, and this is where we make use of the arguments, right? Because we will take in content and arguments dot content. So as you remember, content is a field of node, and we want to set, we don't worry about the ID since it's automatically generated, and we want to set the content from the one that's being passed to arguments to our new object of the node that will be stored in a database. And that's it for this function. After that, we are going to create export constant update node. And let's copy this one, paste it, and update. So in case of the update, this is where we need the where condition, because first we need to find which node are we updating. And that would be possible to find it by ID, since ID is always unique to every node. So this, and then we're gonna call an update function. Let's pass a where condition. So where ID arguments, and then this one, we're gonna pass it as node ID inside of the arguments. And the data next comes whatever it is that we want to update. So let's say if you want this function only to update content, or if you have more fields, you can have like different functions for it. But right now we have one field, so let's just update that. All right, so done with the actions. And last thing to remember, every time the database is updated, meaning like this Wasp main Wasp file, we have to also run the migrate command that's gonna sync the database with the cloud. I noticed on terminal, I have added this extra key that caused it not to compile, but so to upload the changes to the database, we run wasp db migrate dev, and then it would load environment variables, load schema, etc. And it's going to ask us a name for migration. I would say just like test, and it's updating schema. Now we get the message that database has been successfully migrated, and let's run a Wasp Studio. Okay, maybe I got the... So it's Wasp DB Studio, and it will open up new Prisma Studio on localhost 555. It's a new path. And you can see that in the modules list, we have our node module. We haven't added any rows, but it's very simple to add the record, ID automatically generated, and for the content, I would say node 1, and we press save one change. Oops, let me refresh. Okay, that is saved, and now it's time to move on to the client and display what we have. So inside the main Wasp file, we also define pages, and as you can see, we have the main page defined that's also inside the client folder. So let's just navigate into the main page and see what we have. This is all the starter code that we don't need anymore, so I'm just gonna delete it. And same goes for this whole main folder. I'm just going to remove this, and for our container, going to rename nodes container. All right, now let's see how we can run the queries. First, we will need to import this use query hook from Wasp queries, and that would be like this from it comes from the module itself. And next we have to import the queries that we defined. So let's go do all 3 of them, 2 queries and one query, 2 actions. Queries and get nodes. I have 2 M's in here. Okay, this one's going to be create node, and it's coming from actions. Then we have update node, that's also coming from actions. So how do we access data? It's actually pretty simple, and we don't need to create any hooks, separate states for data, loading states, etc. That could all be accessed using this one use query hook, which I think it's pretty amazing. And we can rename the data object that's coming back. Let's name this one nodes. Then we have this is fetching state, during which we can display the loading state, and use query. In here, we're gonna pass the query function that we defined, get nodes. And that's it. When Notes reloads, this object will automatically reload. And let's see it in action right now. I'm going to create a new div for the list. We're going to name it Notes List. And here, if we have notes, and let's map them. So first we'll take the note, and after that we'll take the index, and let's just return another div which inside it has the note content. We need to pass the key since this is like, it's gonna be a list, so the keys, not the string, but the variable itself. And in here we will have note.content. I'm going to save this, go to our application, and the import doesn't look right, so let's double check what's the issue with that. Oh, I just realized in the main Wasp function I haven't added the... First, I defined the action as update node. No, I have a typo. And second, we also have to add the create node. So that would be create node. Action server, okay. Let's save this. Let's run our migrate. Okay, now let's check, update our application. So here we have note 1. Now let's see how we can save a new note. So going back to main page, I will create a new component here, and this will be for the form that users can fill out with the note information. And then we're going to trigger the create note function. So new note. Let's first create the note. So this is going to the form. And I'm going to add this form in here. All right, next we have an input for the content. So name equals content, class name equals note, input type would be text, as we have note content as a string, and placeholder mine. Default value, we're gonna have empty string. And now let's close this one up. Then we have a submit button, type equals submit. Class name, save button, and text would be save note. Let's save this first, make sure the form is getting displayed. So that's our form right there. I'm gonna set this side by side so we can see the changes. And one more thing that we need is what happens when user submits. So On submit, that equals to handle submit. And let's create the function. This is going to be asynchronous since we're adding the data to the database. And first we want to take the event and prevent default so that our page doesn't get reloaded. After that, we can create a try catch and take the content that equals to event target content dot value. Then we will reset that value. And await. We already have create node function from here, and that's it. We have it imported. We just need to pass, oops, not the, just create node and pass content. If there's any errors, we catch it. You can do window alert. Plus the error message. Alright, what if prettier caught it first? Let's test it out. Second note. See, our list got updated automatically. As I mentioned, we didn't have to add usually how it goes, add this input to the list or etc. This notes state here handled it. That's coming from the query. Now let's make this more like an actual notes application and let users update the notes. So when they click, we want to go into this edit mode, and when, for example, users click away, then we want to send this updated notes to the database. So for that one, first I am going to create a separate notes list and then update note as like a separate component. And we need to just, because this one is a text, it doesn't take in any input, so we have to update that as an input as well. So first, getting started with the notes list. It's gonna take in notes as props, and first thing we're gonna check if there's no notes, we wanna just display the text that we don't have any notes. So props, notes, and length, return, no notes. Otherwise, let's return a div with the class name notes list. So what we have here. And instead of here, we will get this notes from the props. So props that notes, and now let's modify this and create a separate component for that one, and just gonna switch this one with the notes list. Alright, we should see now visual changes in here. And now moving on to the node component. So here we want to detect when user is editing and user is done editing. For that one, we will need a React hook, which is use state. So I'm going to import use state from React. And create here is editing set is editing. This will take in Boolean value, and initially it would be set as false. use state. Okay. And let's also take the value of the input that is going to be for the updated nodes. So use state, and then by default this would be coming down from props node.content. So whatever content is coming from the database, that is the default value until user changes. So now let's turn this, if user is editing, turn this into an input. So return first, giving it a class name node item, and then we are going to check is editing. If it is, we're going to have an input. Let's give it a class name node content. Type is going to be text. Value equals to our state of the value. And we'll also define onChange and onBlur functions. So what's going to happen onChange is we'll store the value as user types in, and onBlur means that when user clicks away, we know that they're done updating, and we're going to send that data to the database. So handle input change, which I'll create it right after, and onBlur handle input blur. So that would be our input element. And after this one, actually, we'll have a div that just displays the content. Content on click handle input click, another function, and value. So when user clicks, that means that they want to start editing. So we're going to update that. All right, now let's define the functions. So first one, let's get started with handle input change. This would simply take in an event and set value to event target value. Then we have handle input blur. So this one would set is editing to false. And then here we want to create a function, use the function where we send the data to the database. So let's actually create that one first. So constant handle, I'm gonna name it content change, and that would be a synchronous. It will take in content. Try catch. And let's do error the message. And await update node. This is the action coming from this server. And as you remember, inside our actions, we are taking node ID as an argument and the content. So note ID props dot ID. So let's pass that down using props. And as for the contents, that would be dynamic since user is typing, and content. So our argument inside the function. And here, let's make this function also asynchronous. I do not need caps lock for that. And await handle content change to the value. And one last thing, we have handle input click that's gonna enter into editing mode. So set is editing to true. Let's see, so if I press, let's take this note and replace it in our notes list. So note, and then key equals to IDX, and we'll just pass the note as props. Let's save this. So far no changes, but if we press this, this turns indeed into an input. And let's update this, say something like updated. So I'm gonna click away. Two things are supposed to happen. One is that set is editing should be set to false, and second, it should update into our DB. Let's check, reload this, and second note update. Okay, handle input change. Oh, it's on blur. Yes, so now it turned into a text. Now I'm just gonna update the styling to make it look a little bit nicer and also add some notes so we have more data on the page. So here's the modified version of my styling, and if you want to make your app look like this, I would also include the link to my GitHub repository, so you can just take it from there, customize it, or let us know. And this would be it for the quick overview. And in this short tutorial, we did build a full stack notes application with CRUD functionalities, which was pretty cool. And let me know if you guys want to see, they have other really cool features like authentication, setting up an email server, also very easy deployment. So let me know in the comments what you think. Thanks for watching the tutorial, and I'll see you guys in the next one.